Sometimes I wonder, as I wonder where to go. And sometimes I wonder, as I wonder who to follow. But no matter how, of course, I think I might be doing. No matter how, of course, I think I might be. There's always greater wisdom I'm pursuing, a greater will than mine to set me free. True north, true north, all the back and forth is simply a part of the movement toward true north. Sometimes I feel like I'm alone, all alone in the world. And sometimes I don't know where to go, but I know who I'm here to be. And when the writing on the wall becomes unfamiliar, and I need to be reminded why I'm here, I turn my eyes within and remember I'm breathing. A greater will than mine has brought me here, and I surrender. True north, true north, all the back and forth is simply a part of the movement toward true north. True north, true north, true north. Thank you so much, sir.
Beautiful. Infinite love. Wow. Let's just take a deep breath and celebrate that wonderful energy. I have been blessed so much in my life. I've been blessed so much by this spiritual community, and I've been especially blessed by the music that we get to hear and experience. And Sean has been such a wonderful, integral part of that. And thank you for being back with us. Yeah. What a gift. Thank you, God. Well, we've been having a fun time learning and growing about the prosperity process. And we've been working with a wonderful work called Spiritual Economics. And it's, anybody of you started reading this since we started the class? A few? Yeah, it's a great read. I want you to know there's just some insights in here that I can't possibly cover all of them. But there's some really valuable awarenesses and insights. And so I do encourage people to get the book and read it. It's worth doing. I want to start off this morning by affirming one of our first and primary unity principles. And the principle is, God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power, and God is good and present everywhere. God is good and present everywhere. What do you think about that? Does that ring true for you? It's something that we say a lot and we affirm a lot, but to me, I just think it's so valuable for us to hold that understanding and awareness. And as I have been working with this book called Spiritual Economics, The Principles and Process of True Prosperity, I really think that that's one of the primary things that we're really focused on and talking about, is this understanding that the divine is everywhere in everything. And I think that's very true for a lot of us, except sometimes when it comes to money. Am I right?
Yes.
We seem to make exceptions when it comes to money for some reason, don't we? And so I'm going to invite us today to really talk a little bit about this subject that we oftentimes don't like to talk about in churches, because we think somehow there's this message that we've gotten that somehow it's not spiritual, it's not sacred. And I want to ask us to explore that thought and that belief and that idea. And as Sean says, when we do this, let's be sure and remember to do what we said in the first song. Let's lighten up. And remember that there really is only one presence and one power in the universe, and that's true in our money as well. And we want to talk a little bit about that and explore that a little bit today. I came across this story from a lady named Emily Fosdick in Reader's Digest, and she says, when I called my friend at his dorm room, I was somewhat surprised by his answering machine message. And the answering machine said this: "Hi, this is Dave. If it's the phone company, I sent the money. If it's mom and dad, please send money. If it's a friend, you still owe me money. And if it's financial aid, you didn't loan me enough money. And if it's a female, leave a message and don't worry, I've got plenty of money." Oh boy. And I came across this little cartoon. Little Billy says, "Mom, how will I know when I'm a millionaire? I can only count to 12. I think it's important for us to begin to look at some of the things that we think and say about our money in life. And that's one of the things that Eric really tells us, is that we want to really look at this idea, this understanding of money. And before I get into that, I want to kind of recap some of the things we've been talking about and some of the principles and the process of moving into an experience of prosperity and what we've been talking about over the last several weeks. And so I want to I just wrote down just kind of a recap of each of the different kind of steps that Eric was trying to take us through in order to move into an awareness of abundance and prosperity. And these are kind of just my little one-sentence kind of phrases about what are some of the principles that he's trying to show us and teach us and being able to develop a consciousness of abundance and prosperity in our lives. And he says the first thing is to immerse yourself in that infinite flow of the one divine substance or divine creative aware energy that is unlimited and is everywhere present. So we immerse ourselves in that knowing of this divine substance. And this is what Charles Fillmore taught also. One of the first things to do is just immerse yourself in that real knowing. And then the second thing is to recognize and accept that this energy or substance flows through you, and that you and not others, your circumstances, the government, your job, or world, you are responsible for bringing it forth into your life as abundance. So it's about accepting responsibility for our abundance in life, because we can't experience it until we're willing to accept that. And then the next part is to then visualize yourself as you want to be and or as you want your life to be. Use that gift and that tool of visualizing and seeing what it is that it is you want to experience, and stop visualizing what it is that you don't want to experience, through worry and fear and anxiety. Make sense? And then 4, believe and accept your abundance is already being so right now, that you already experience and are in that abundance and really get that sense and that feeling of that. It's believing and having that faith that it's already there. And then develop an attitude of gratitude in and through all things, situations and circumstance, because we know that the energy and the attitude, the vibration of gratitude is an attractive energy that draws even more good into our experiences. And then the sixth one he taught was about seeking and finding ways for us to give and to share our own gifts and talents in life, ways to give of ourselves through our work, through service, and to basically to give value into the world. And this is where you have the wonderful affirmation, I am God's living enterprise, and God cannot fail. I am God's living enterprise, and God cannot fail. And so part of our work is to allow the energy of the gifts of talents to work out into whatever we're doing in our lives and to express that. And then to reverse financial adversity, I kind of came up with this idea of unsubscribing from all the negative messages about the economy. You know, uncheck the box. You know, you have to really stop buying into all that's being said about how bad everything is, because the reality is everybody has their own economy, and it has to do with your own energy and your own consciousness. And that if we buy into the belief system that the economy determines our well-being, then we're missing the mark, and we're actually reversing the creative process. And then 8, he encourages us to give up the belief that our security comes from outside of ourself and our connection with our source. That we give up this idea that we are somehow that our security is something out there, whether it be our job, our bank account, or our retirement funds, or that our true security lies in seeking first the kingdom. That our true knowing of who and what we are and our true blessings and abundance come from that source within our own being. And so it's important for us to really shift that awareness and know that it doesn't really come from all of the things those are wonderful channels that we can have good things in, but that's not where our source is. Does that make sense? And then we're getting to the next one, which is, the way I phrase it is, it's important for us to clean up our act around money. To clean up our awareness, to clean up our thoughts, clean up our energy, clean up our feelings. And I call it cleaning and healing our money relationship. In fact, I created a whole workshop some years ago called Healing Your Money Relationship, because I really think that one of the things that tends to and can block us from really experiencing even more of our good in our lives is some of the baggage that we've accepted and bought in about money. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Anybody have any of that?
Yes.
I think you can't live in this society, in this culture, without having some energy and some baggage about money. Eric calls it a money enigma, which means an enigma basically is kind of like a puzzle or something that's difficult to explain or describe. But I'm going to suggest to you that one of the things I'm beginning to realize is that money can be, and if we allow it to be, it can be one of our most important and significant spiritual teachers. Do you realize that? It really can be. And something that came to me some time ago is that we can gain more insight and awareness about ourselves and how we are in the world and what issues that we need to address and transform and heal by looking at how we relate and how we are with our money in life. And that sometimes can feel uncomfortable, can it? And part of the reason is that I realize that there's most of us have some kind of issues in some way with money. Money, we can have issues of safety and trust. We can have issues of value and worth. We can have issues of love and need. And we can have issues of power and control. And you can just circle the one that really works for you. You know, we all have one of those somewhere in there probably. Wouldn't you agree? There's something in there about that we tend to get hooked oftentimes, and I think it's really a part of our culture in many ways. And so part of our work is to begin to shift our thinking, our feeling, and our talk about money. One of the things that Eric said, and let me kind of start here, he has a wonderful way of saying a lot of things, so I want to read a couple of things just briefly for you. He starts off by saying there's little likelihood that your life can become fully functioning with prosperity unless you have a positive and creative attitude toward money. It is rare that a day will pass when we will not have some kind of monetary involvement in the world. Can you think of a particular day when you didn't have some kind of monetary involvement in the world? I suspect it's not going to there's going to be something there in some way. And so he goes on to really talk about how it's important for us to look at how we are working with the energy of money. And that's how I describe it. I really do think money really is an energy. He calls it a symbol. It really is a symbol, isn't it? And it's interesting because it's a symbol, and what it's meant to be is a symbol of supply. It's meant to be a symbol of abundance, but that doesn't always show up for us sometimes. Sometimes we take on the energy of money in a way that doesn't necessarily mean abundance to us. Does that make sense? We can have thoughts and feelings about money that we're dealing with and not have that feeling of abundance. And sometimes we can have just the opposite, can't we? And it's important for us to recognize that we are creative beings, that we are participating in a creative process all the time. There is that one presence and one power that's working in and through us, and it is a creative presence and power, and it is creating right now in and through us. And so part of our work is to shift our energy and our awareness about how and what we are creating in our experiences in our lives. And so one of the ways that we can do that is to pay attention and notice the energy that we hold when we're dealing with our money. Make sense? He goes on to say that, he said, no matter how many powerful affirmations of truth you can speak by rote, you still have to pay your bills. Actually, that's not true. Is it?
No.
You don't have to pay your bills.
No.
But you don't necessarily want the consequences of not paying your bills. Is that accurate?
That's more accurate.
So it's important to recognize that we do have choice in this circumstance and situation, right? And choice is an important thing to really be a part of and recognize that we do have choices in how we are working with the energy of money in our lives. So he says this chapter is included in the prosperity study full well, realizing that there are many persons who think it is sacrilege to talk about money in a spiritual context. And they are quick to quote scripture, money is the root of all evils. And actually, this is the most misquoted of all Bible passages. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
What Paul really said is the love of money is the root of all evils. And I'm going to suggest to you an even different translation. The lust for money is the root of all kinds of evils. This is a more literal translation of what Paul was trying to say. There's a real, anybody, can you get the difference between the word love and the word lust?
Yes. Now I do.
I know when we were teenagers that was a little challenging. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
But, you know, with a little bit of maturity, we have a tendency to begin to recognize a little bit of the difference in that. But the word lust really does mean to be overly desirous of. To be overly desirous of. And I can tell you that when we are overly desirous of anything, you know, the interesting thing about this translation, it really doesn't translate as money either, for that matter. What Paul really was saying, that the lust after something that is, he calls it mammon. And the word mammon has been translated in many translations as money, but what it really means is materiality. And so let's think about it just in terms of the material world. When we are eagerly lusting after something in the material world, that is the root of all kinds of evils. And the reason why it's the root of all kinds of evils is because we are inversing the creative process. Let me say a little bit more about that because I think it's so valuable and important. You and I are created in the image and after the likeness of the divine. We are in the process of creating right now. Either consciously or unconsciously, we are creating something. We are creating an experience. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
And we are, as I was sharing with Julie yesterday, we are either creating, promoting, or allowing our experiences in life. Does that make sense? So we may not be consciously creating it. Sometimes we're unconsciously creating it. Or we are promoting it in some way, or we are actually allowing it sometimes by simply not even being aware of what we're doing. Does that make sense? Not being aware that we are in the creative process and that we're participating in creation in some way. And so it's valuable for us to recognize that when we inverse the creative process, what we're really doing is looking for something out here in the world, something that is material, to fulfill a need that is really a spiritual need. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so our first work, our real work, is to shift that process and recognize that creation really works from the within out. Our good really comes from the within out. Our abundance really comes from the within out, and not the other way around. It really goes along with this understanding that we were talking about earlier about how it's not necessarily our bank accounts or our jobs or those things that provide us security. That our real security comes through that connection we have with the divine, with the one source, with Spirit. And the more we can tune into that, the more we can tap into that awareness, the more we're in that flow of the creative process, and we'll find that the abundance of the universe begins to flow through us in a way that it blesses not only us, but it blesses all of those around us as well, because we become even more of an expression of the light, the good, the blessings in our lives and our world. Does that make sense? So I want to ask you a question. And one of the things that he talks about that's so important, I think, is that it's really important for us to look at how we are working with the energy of money. And he says this several times in this chapter. He says, get the positive thought that money is good. Now, I want to ask you, when I say that, what do you experience and what do you feel? Ambivalence. Some resistance, maybe. I think we have often heard just the opposite of this, haven't we? But he says several times, get the awareness that money is good. And money is God in action. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not the only way that God is in action. It's not the only way that we can experience good, but it is an important way that we can experience good in our lives, isn't it? And it depends upon our thoughts and feelings and energies about it. That's what determines how it shows up for us and how we experience life. Isn't that true of just everything in our lives? The attitude and the energy that we hold about another person is pretty much how they show up in our lives. Isn't that true? In our class on Tuesday nights, we're working with a wonderful book called Complaint-Free Relationships. And one of the primary things that he focuses on at the very beginning is ultimately every relationship that we have really a relationship with a story that we have about the other person. Think about this for a moment. I like to see it more as an image that we have. We have this image of people, and oftentimes when we come into a relationship for the very first time, we have this image of this person. We basically fall in love with this image of who we think they are, right? And then they start living their lives, and they don't always show up exactly as we think that they are. And then I kind of look at it this way, this is who they are, and then we create this image of them as how they are, and then we create this relationship with the image that we've created. Make sense? And then they begin to do something that doesn't necessarily fit that image. And this is when we get into all kinds of challenges and conflicts in our relationships, because wait a minute, that's not who you are. You need to get back over here. This is who you are. Right? We know who you are, and you're not acting that way. Make sense? Well, we do the same thing with our money. We do the same thing with money. We have a relationship. In fact, I would suggest to you, it came to me this last week, I would suggest that all of our spirituality and all of our spiritual growth has to do with a relationship. That's really what it's about. It has to do with relationships. It's all about relationships with each other. It's all about relationships with the world. It's all about relationships with our source. It's all about relationships with ourselves. And it's all about relationships with our money. Now, let me ask you something. If you had someone in your life you had a relationship with who thought that you were, and maybe some of these would ring true for you, maybe you heard some of these kind of ideas about money. If you had someone in your life who, thought you were dirty, you ever heard this idea, dirty money? Yeah. If you had someone there that you felt like was just never there for you, anybody ever had that feeling about money? If you had somebody in your life that you felt was actually the other side, somebody that was responsible for your happiness and well-being. What if you had somebody in your life, you had a relationship that you felt like they were just the cause of all your problems? And that you thought that they were somehow the root of all evil. Here's a few more. How many of you, if you had someone in your life who you thought was, the more you have, you have to have more of them all of the time.
Oh, boy.
Any of this sound, you understand what I'm, okay, well, what if you had someone in your life who said, well, you know, it's not important. It's only. What if you had someone who said to you, well, you're only, and you're not really spiritual? Ooh, boy, I gotta go with it. How many of you would want to hang around a person like that? Well, I'm going to suggest to you, money, we hurt money's feelings all the time. We have been just downright mean to our money because of all the negative messages that we have accepted and bought in life, haven't we? And one of the things that exercises I take people through is I'm going to encourage you to take some time to make amends with your money and do some forgiveness work around these belief systems that you've accepted and bought about money, because they really are not true. Money really is, you know, there are people who say that money is neutral, but I'm going to suggest to you that's like saying that the divine is neutral. If there's only one presence and one power in the universe, and that presence and power is everywhere in all things, there is a benevolent force throughout the universe that is consistently trying to bless us. And all of the universe, in some way, is consistently trying to bless us. And I'm going to suggest to you, your money is trying to do the same as well. And in order for your money to bless you, you have to be in a relationship where you are also blessing your money. Does that make sense? And so it's important for us to look at and pay attention to the inner dialogues that we have, the inner narrative that we create about the money in our lives, and begin to change some of the conversations we have with it and about it. One of the things Eric encourages you to do, and let's do a quick little exercise, if you will, and invite you to bring out some form of money, $1, a penny, a nickel, it doesn't matter. Just bring out some form. And then, if you don't have one, borrow one from somebody next to you and just promise to pay it back. I can assure you, they'll pay it back. So just pick one. No, I'm not going to ask you to tear it up. I'm not even going to ask you to send it forward at this point. If I was going to do that, I would say pick out the biggest one you have, right? But I am going to ask you to take a second and look at it. And one of the things Eric asked us to do is take a minute and just actually look at a form of money. And look at the side that has the number on it. Look at the side that has a number on it. Mine has a 1 on it. And so one of the things he says is that 1 is it's a symbol of what of the amount, or it's actually a symbol of a limitation, which I thought was pretty interesting. That this side of the currency is a limiting thought and idea. And it's important sometimes for us to be able to actually kind of bring things into focus, right? And part of what our work is learning how to bring the spiritual essence into concrete form and into focus. But he's asking us to really notice as we're handling our money, to turn it over and look on the other side. Now there's numbers on the other side as well, but notice the green side. So if you got a dollar bill, you'll see a green side. You don't see a green side if you got a penny, but that's okay. you'll get what I'm talking about. Notice what it says right above the 1, or right above the 5, or right above the 20, or whatever it is. Anybody recognize that phrase? In God we trust. Is that true? Yeah. It is a good bit of the time, isn't it? But it's important for us when we're handling our money to have that kind of thought and that kind of energy when we're working with the energy of money. Because it is that kind of energy that our whole system was founded on in many ways. This right here, it's called currency. And currency comes from the same word as the word current. And you cannot have a current unless there is a flow. Does that make sense? So there's two ways that we have a tendency to restrict our money, to block the flow of our money. One is we make it too important, and the other is we make it too unimportant. Does that make sense? And so when we're lusting after something, we're making it too important, but at the same time, we make it so important that sometimes we hold on and we constrict. One of the things that I've really been getting more and more awareness about is the moment that you find yourself having some sense or feeling or experience of not having enough of this, the first tendency is to constrict, isn't it? And it's absolutely the opposite of what spiritual principle is telling us to do. It's what the world tells us to do. Oh, we have to conserve, we have to save, we have to put more away, we have to hide it, we have to protect it, we have to... Does that make sense? Yeah, that's what the world tells us. I'm going to suggest to you that probably one of the most valuable thing we can do when we find ourselves starting to get into an energy of feeling not enoughness, when we're dealing with not only money but anything in our life, whether it be love or health, anything in our life, is to find some way to allow it to flow. And I'm not suggesting that see, here's the thing, the flow doesn't necessarily stop coming in. It never stops coming in. I kind of get this image that there's this amazing stovepipe that's consistently pouring in blessings in and through us. And the only place it ever gets stuck is when it is out here, is going this way. And so one of the most valuable things for us to do when we find ourselves in that search and unsatisfied situation is to find some way. And the reality is it doesn't have to be give it all away. That's not what we're saying. Find some way to get back into the flow. And give yourself some way of getting back into that flow of the divine energy that currency really is supposed to be. And that's what it's intended for. Does that make sense? So that's one of the really valuable lessons I think that Eric is trying to show us. There's so many gems in this particular lesson. One of the things I wanted to read to you is right over here. Charles Sillmore says, watch your thoughts when you're handling your money, because your money is attached through your mind to the one source of all substance and all money. When you think of your money, which is visible, as something directly attached to an invisible source that is giving or withholding according to your thought, you have then the key to all riches and all lack. Yeah. Say it again. All right. Watch your thoughts when you're handling your money, because your money is attached through your mind to the one source of all substance and all money. When you think of your money, which is visible, as something directly attached to an invisible source that is giving or withholding according to your thought, then you have the key to all riches and all lack. So what he's really saying is the most invaluable thing about money is what we're thinking as we're dealing with it. How we are feeling when we're handling it. How we're feeling when we're paying our bills. How we're feeling when we are paying our taxes. The energy of abundance is in the symbol of currency if we allow it to be that for us. And so it's important for us to notice and pay attention to how it can be a blessing for us in lives. And the way it can do that is that by our putting out our energy of blessing with it and for it. So just ask yourself the question, what kind of relationship do I really want to have with my money? Do I want to have one that's one of struggle? Remember we talked about the different energies of abundance. Do you want to have an energy that's an energy of struggle? Then we can move into an energy of enoughness. It's an important step to take in working with abundance, but that it also works very well specifically with money. Having this sense and this feeling of enoughness. And the more you can get that energy and that sense and that feeling of enoughness, you will begin to, that's the what I call the surviving level. See, we have the striving level, and then we have the surviving level, and then we have the thriving level. And what we're trying to move to is the thriving level, but we generally can't move into the thriving level until we get through the enoughness level, the energy of having enough. And when you can practice that sense and that feeling of having enough in this moment right now, and as Charles says, you know, when you look in your wallet, be sure that you don't attach this only kind of thought or feeling to dealing with money. You know, it's too easy to look at your paycheck and say, well, I only make. And that automatically tells your money that it's only. Does that make sense? I'm going to suggest to you that money tends to respond to us in just about any other way that any relationship would. So if you want to really have a healthy, loving relationship with your money, just notice and pay attention to your energy with it and about it. So have fun with that this week. Have fun with your money this week. Lighten up.
Oh, lighten up. Oh, lighten up. Don't take yourself so serious. Come on, sing, lighten up. Oh, lighten up. Don't take yourself so serious. Here we go. Whoa. Whoa. Yeah, whoa. 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 I don't see how it could be any fun walking around like you're some kind of number one. Everybody asking your name, trying to figure out the rules of your game. Well, as for me, I like to lay low. I like to watch the birds outside my window. Well, you look like you come a long, long way. But if you're looking to be happy, all I've got to say is what? Lighten up, yeah. Whoa, lighten up. Don't take yourself so serious. Come on now, lighten up. Whoa, lighten up. Don't take yourself so serious. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now when I think of all the time I've wasted, it makes me want to turn the clocks back so I can change. But now I know the past is gone, and there's nothing left to do right now but sing this silly little song. So come on now, lighten up. Whoa, lighten up. Don't take yourself so serious. Come on now, lighten up. Whoa, lighten up. Don't take yourself. Whoa, lighten up. yourself so serious. Come on now, lighten up. Whoa, lighten up. Don't take yourself so